If it wasn't for the Christmas shit, I wouldn't fucking work. This is the only...
So y'all know who Garfield is, right? I don't need to introduce you to or anything, do I? Now, personally, I've never really had an attachment to Garfield. Like, I used to watch the Garfield show a lot when I was little, and I remember watching the direct-to-video movies, but other than that, I've never really been, like... I've never really had an opinion on him, honestly. I remember liking the live-action movies when I was little, too. I don't anymore. Those are not good. Oh, and speaking of movies, wow, would you look at that? Now, apparently this movie was announced in 2016, but I didn't find out about it until 5 years later when they announced Chris Pratt was going to be voicing Garfield. Now, this was only a little over a month after they announced he'd also be playing Mario, so yeah. People weren't happy.
He's so cool.
I can't really remember what I thought of this decision myself, but I do remember a lot of people being really confused. The trailer would end up coming out for another 2 years on a Monday. Said Monday happened to also be my birthday, so thanks for the gift, I guess. It was also the first time we got to hear Chris's voice as Garfield, and people weren't too hot on it.
Never, John. Bury me in cheese.
Honestly, I thought he sounded fine. He just didn't sound bored enough, and it jumped the gun a little bit. I still feel that way after seeing the movie, but we'll get there when we get there, trust me. Anyways, the movie would eventually release 6 months later, and reception was very mixed, to say the least. People either really liked it or really hated it. But what did I, someone who's not very fond of Garfield, think of it? Well, I went to go see the movie on the 4th, and I'm directly in the middle. Yeah, you see Garfield's face here? That was me watching this movie. Honestly, I just thought it was incredibly mediocre, and yet it is still the best thing I've seen this year. Damn. Hey, future Octo here. I watched If yesterday and really liked it, so this doesn't really apply anymore. Sorry.
Is that...
Might as well get the Elephant Mario in the room out of the way first.
Whoa, Zowie!
Hush. I already mentioned this earlier in the video, but Chris Pratt did fine as Garfield. He didn't do terrible or anything, but he did fine. The main problem for me is that he doesn't sound bored enough, because he has the sarcasm, but not the boredom to balance it out. Funny thing is, I have the same problem with Frank Welker's Garfield, who I also like, but in reverse. There, he has the boredom, but not the sarcasm. I do imagine balancing it out probably isn't the easiest thing to do, and I do get it. Honestly, for the most part, the voice acting was pretty good. Samuel L. Jackson from Paws of Fury and Nothing Else did pretty good as Garfield's dad, and I like the villain a lot. She wears this gem necklace that changes color depending on her mood, and I really like that about her. Though she is barely in the movie. They set her up at the beginning, but she doesn't really do much until like the very end where she tries to throw Garfield's dad off of a train. Ving Rhames also voices the bull character Otto. And this movie is how I found out that he is the Arby's guy, so that's cool. There's also this animal control lady whose design I really hate, and her voice is not much better. She's introduced in like the middle of the movie and tries to take Garfield, his dad, and Odie to the pound, and when she does eventually take Odie and Garfield to the pound, she just disappears for like the rest of the movie until the very end. The villain has these two henchmen that kidnap Garfield and Odie at the beginning and then proceed to do nothing else for the entire movie. I like the short one, I guess, but other than that, they just exist. Odie doesn't really do much either, but he's probably my favorite character in the movie. He just sounds like Blue's Clues when he barks, and I think that's adorable. I love him. Something else I really like were the visuals. I think this movie looks really pretty. Well, most of the time. I'm not really all that big on Otto's design or a good bit of the human designs, but other than that, this movie looks pretty good. It does look off in some of the scenes. There's this crowd shot, and one of the characters had a really low frame rate, and it was just only them, and it really bothered me. If I had to talk about things I didn't really like all that much, I wasn't really that big on the story. My problem with it isn't that it doesn't feel like Garfield. I'm not really the right person here to talk about that. I was never really all that attached to Garfield, but my main problem with it is that it's just not interesting at all. The pacing's also really weird. I thought it would have been like the Mario movie where it's way too fast and doesn't give anything any time to breathe, but no, it's more so all over the place in this movie. There's this one scene when they're playing to sneak into the big milk factory where Otto the bull gives them code names based on animals. If I remember correctly, Odie gets a squirrel, Vic gets a frog, and then Garfield just gets roadkill. And it's kind of funny at first, I guess, but then it just keeps going on and on and on to the point where I was like, oh my god, we get it. Another example of this movie's weird-ass pacing would probably be the ending. Pretty much Garfield's dad moves in with him, Odie, and John after reconciling with Garfield, and you'd think it would end there, but it doesn't. After that is a scene where Garfield makes the most fucking disgusting looking lasagna for everyone, and you'd think it would end there, but it still doesn't. After that is the scene of Garfield, his dad, and Odie doing random stuff now that they're together. And then the movie ends. Also, the funny Bear Me and Cheese scene doesn't happen until like the last third of the movie. Don't know where else to bring this up, but yeah. Actually, speaking of funny, this movie really isn't. There are some funny jokes in the movie, but most of the time it's just not funny. Like the roadkill joke I mentioned earlier. This movie does start with Garfield on a smartphone ordering food. Maybe that was a sign this movie wasn't going to be funny. They also make multiple jokes about drones throughout the movie, and Garfield uses them to defeat the villain, and no, it is not funny at all. I haven't even mentioned the product placement yet. Good fucking lord. There's Pop Chips, Walmart, FedEx, Heinz Tomato Ketchup. Garfield mentions fucking Shark Tank, which is still going in the current year. Olive Garden gets mentioned 3 times like it's the Sonic movie or something.
Have you tried their never-ending pasta bowl? It never ends.
I was breastfed, actually.
I'm running out of things to say about this movie, so if there's one more thing I did want to talk about, it is the emotional moments in the movie, particularly the flashback scenes. I like that Garfield's dad didn't leave him because he didn't love him or anything, but just because he was getting food for his son who was really hungry, and I think that's really sweet. I also really like that he doesn't visit Garfield because he figures he has a better life with John. I also think the scene where Garfield discovers all the notches his dad made in the tree outside John's house is also pretty good too. I feel like these scenes would be even better if they were in a movie with much better executed comedy and story, but it is what it is sometimes, I guess. And honestly, that's all I really have to say about this movie. Wish it was way better than it was, honestly. I wasn't over the moon excited for it or anything, but I was hoping it'd be a fine little movie. Mark Dindal directing the movie was definitely one of the main reasons I was interested in. Mainly because all 3 of the movies he directed before this one I really love, even Chicken Little, batshit insane as it is. I will say it is the best Garfield movie, but it's extremely telling when the best Garfield movie is only really mediocre. You could do a whole lot worse, especially this year, but you could definitely do a lot better. It's much better than something like Gaturo the movie or both Marmaduke movies at least, so I mean, that's something. If you want a really good movie based on a comic strip, I'd say watch the Peanuts movie instead. This isn't biased since I've always been more of a Peanuts person than a Garfield person, but the movie's just really good. I recommend it a ton. Not enough people talk about it. Not really much else to say other than it's 1 in the morning right now, so bye.